Today, Rinpoche began the section in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment on how you thereby accumulate karma. Once again, we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, and specifically the section called the major heading, Training the Mind in the Stage of the Path to in Common with Beings of Medium Capacity. So first we'll look at the outline, and it begins with four different categories under the heading Training the Mind in the Stage of the Path shared in common with beings of medium capacity. So first we have the mental training, the second category is the measure of one's renunciation, or the measure of one's determination to be free or desire to emerge. The third category is dispelling misconceptions. And then the fourth category is ascertaining the nature of the path leading to liberation or leading to enlightenment. So these are the four categories. And then when we look at the first two categories, first we have the actual mental training, and then we have two categories. First, identifying the mind intent on liberation, so the identification of renunciation, a mind of renunciation. And then the second category is the method for developing the mind intent on liberation. So when we skip to that second category after the mental training section on identifying the mind, we get to that method, and there are two categories there that we find. First is reflection on suffering and its origin, and then second category is reflection from the viewpoint of the 12 links of dependent origination. So these are the two categories under that major heading of developing the mind, the method for developing the mind intent on liberation. So the second part is now the actual reflection on suffering and its origin, the first category within that method section. So that's broken down then into two categories. First, reflection on the truth of suffering, the faults of cyclic existence, and then reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of origin. So we get to the reflection on the truth of suffering, the faults of cyclic existence, and we find two categories in Lama Tsongkhapa's outline. First, showing the significance of the Buddha asserting the truth of suffering as the first among the four noble truths. And then the second category is the actual meditation on suffering. So when we get to that actual meditation on suffering, we then have the categories of the general sufferings of cyclic existence, and then the specific sufferings of cyclic existence, and then it's broken down into various categories. Suffering, 8 types of suffering, 6 types of suffering, 3 types of suffering. So once that section is completed, then we move on to reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of origin. So that's the section that we're dealing with right now. And we've gone through a couple of the categories already, but Rinpoche wanted to give the general outline of it again. So if everybody wants to turn to like page 297, 98 area, that's where we'll begin. So the major heading, reflection on suffering of cyclic existence in terms of origin. We find here three categories that are explain this. First category is how the afflictions arise. Second category is then how you thereby then accumulate karma. And then the third category is how you die and are reborn. So going to that first category of how the afflictions arise, there are actually four categories that Lama Tsongkhapa presents in that section. And the first is the identifying the afflictions. The second category is the order in which they arise. Third category is the causes for their arisal. And then the fourth category is the actual downfalls of the afflictions themselves. So these are the four categories, and that brings us to where Rinpoche stopped. Dikson Rinpoche. So now Rinpoche said we'll look at the Lamrim Chenmo. Nipa Dele Sobutsu. Okay, so everybody wants to turn to page 303. That's where we are exactly in the English. How you thereby accumulate karma. Big summary, check.
What the less of the Sabrage, Lemozon, Tajata Subitu, Sajini, Redwa, Sata Sabrage, Lemozon, the La Sambile, the Sambiles, near and was Sambile, the Sambile, Sambile, the Sambile, Nije. That's Sambiles and a Ijile, the Marva, Ile, Sambiles and a Ludangakile. Tangas what the Ijiles are or what the Sambiles are the illiterate. That's Sambiles are the Ludangakile, the Sambile. What the Sambiles?
So this section begins with the heading again, how you thereby accumulate karma. So we've gone through how the afflictions arise, and now it's how you then, after that, accumulate karma. So there are two categories, identifying the karma that you accumulate and how you accumulate karma. And then the identifying the karma that you accumulate has two categories. First category is karma that is intention, and then the second category is karma that is intended action. So karma that is intention is necessarily a mental karma, and karma that is intended action is a physical karma, a karma of the body or the speech. Diksun.
What just the Sambile, what the Nije, that Ambo on the Casa. That's Sambile, the Kundu, no Jango Kundu, Habatume, Sangake, Kundu, Sadanga, Donani, Nana, and the Doato Kundu, Kundule, Sembakanshena, Sangoban Desheva, Ijilete, Goatam, Lomate, Nala, Saint Jubilee, Geno, Jason Batara, Rantan Sumba Dembe, Saint Yula, Yushin, Kuashibi, Shelig, Saint Ijile, Sos, those Sabile, what things are Marba.
Lesser.
What that did. That's Sabile, Takazo, Tangazo, Iji Nabasheva, Nabasheva, Troyoro, Mingi Nabasheva, Nai Nabasheva, Nai Nabasheva, Chi Nabasheva, Luigi Nabasheva, Iji Nabasheva, Troji, Tai Iji Nabashevi, Kodule, Sanrunga Yoro, Sanrunga, Soan, Dushi, Samba, Ila Shiva Riva, Iji Nabashev, Kodushu, Sanrun Samba to what the elite thing, but Ile,
Less so.
Illiterate, ta iji naba shiba yulin jugoro, ta iji naba shiba yulin jugore, and then Yundamana Mobile Jugoro, Yundamara Jubi Nebate, and then T. Kutushun, Sambati Yoris, Samba. Somebody Nebala Tene, and the Tatum Sumbati, iji naba shibate, Yulin Jugo, Shelis, what the iji lady, Samariba. Yeah.
So this section begins with a quote from Master Asanga from the Compendium of Knowledge. So when we look at Master Asanga's works, we find there are the 5 treatises on the levels and then the compendiums. So this categorically falls under the compendium section, and it's goes to show that the karma that's being identified here, that is intention, is a mental karma, and that mental karma is necessarily, it's a mental factor. So I guess first let's go through the section. So my path, there we go. The Compendium of Knowledge. What is intention? It is mental karma that involves the mind. It acts to engage the mind in virtuous, non-virtuous, and ethically neutral activities. Thus, intention is mental karma, a process that moves and urges the mind with its associated, which is associated towards objects. So, what does that mean? When you look at consciousness, there are 6 types of consciousness. There's eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, tactile consciousness, and then mental consciousness. And then when we look at mental factors, there are what is called omnipresent mental factors. And these mental factors are always present when there is a mental consciousness. So they are kind of acting and associated. Here you use this word, associated. So it's this intention itself categorically is a mental factor. So that's what it's pointing out here. So it's necessarily it's a karma that is mental karma. So when we look at the omnipresent mental factors, these mental factors are always present when there's consciousness, any among those 6. So we have feeling, discrimination, intention, contact, and mental engagement. So here, the word intention is used specifically to mean this type of mental factor that's being presented here, which is something that is abiding always with the consciousness itself, and then it's associating, it says here, associating towards objects. So when there's an apprehension of some sort of an object, it's then I don't want to use the word loosely, filling in the details. It's you have intention, discrimination, feeling, contact, mental engagement. So this is the kind of presence of feeling, intention, and kind of result of intention that's present while the consciousness itself is apprehending. So that's what that's referring to. So this means that if it's a karma that is an intention, it's necessarily a mental karma. It's not a physical karma. Karma that has intended action is a physical karma. So I think that's it. Dixon, let me check.
This one. Niba sambi le niba narwa, niba na senti kuna hayu lunga giledes, niba no liji shebi kuna hayu luji le tanga giledele sambi le segres, sambi le. Te kong karasan zo dang doanzu. Le ne samba tante she, samba yiji le yite, te je lu tanga gile, she song bata ros, what the Dango, Sambi less and Tahiji Shibikun and Lutan Agale, Sambi less at the Dua, Sambi less. Tati Sambi let the Sambi le Conte, Susun to Abbot Damakosa, Nduel Song to len samba tante she samba yiji le yite teji lu da ngakile she sumba taros ane samba di yiji le res ne len samba tante she samba yiji le yite sambi le di ile res teji lu da ngakile yiji shebi kuna ngabe ane le zu lu ngakile sambi le res she sumba taros yeah.
So another way I notice that it's writing it is that it's an accompanier. The omnipresent mental factor always accompanies the consciousness itself. Always necessarily accompany all minds. And it says here is a note, even the wisdom cognizing emptiness. So that's just going back a little, the omnipresent mental factors, and that falls under karma that is intention. So now moving on to karma that is intended action. This is necessarily a karma that's created by the body or the speech. This isn't a karma that's created mentally. And who says this? Where do we find this source? We find the source in the Abhidharmakosha, Vasubandhu's Treasury of Knowledge. It's called. It says this is the physical and verbal action motivated by intention. The treasury of knowledge. Karma is both intention and what intention produces. Intention is mental karma. What it produces are physical and verbal karma. The Vaibhashikas divide physical and verbal karma into two types, the perceptible and the imperceptible, and hold that both types always have form. Vasubandhu refutes this, asserting that physical and verbal karma are intentions that work along with perceptible physical and verbal behavior. Thus, both forms of karma, intention and intended, are actually intentions. So here, there's an assertion that all the types of karma, physical and verbal, are necessarily intentions. So here, an intention again is a mental factor. So this is what is held by this school to be truth. Decent.
What the Neshibalu, Zunzu Neshibalite, Neshibango, the Lele Jidan Hasuche, Len Samba Tantishi, Teji Lutangagile, Samba Yijil, Teji Lutangagile, what the Neshibango you are. Jidan country than the Mailova, the Lailova, Samalo, Lele Chevares. Lele Jidan Hasuches, Jidan Hasuba Lele Chevares. When I laid the Karasana, Len Samba Tantishi, Samba Yijil, Teji Lutangagiles, what the Shimon Bare.
The Yanjer Surulang Samba? The Tamba?
Lele Jidan Hasuchero, Lele Jidan Hasuba Kangalo, me lo, Alai Lomalazu, Samba Kangalo, Lele Chevares. Lele Jeba in a late Kandarisana, later Sambi Ledan, Sambi Lini waters.
Oh, less so.
What is she leading, sir?
Less so. So, the less so. Okay, so we also find in the Gula, the beginning. Okay, in the beginning of the Abhidharmakosha, where it states that who created all of the. I don't know if it's in the form of a question or straightforward, but what created the realms and constituents of the world systems, and then it says that karma is the creator, karma of physical and verbal. Physical and mental. Karma, physical and mental. So here, when we look at these two categories, karma that is intention is the mental category, and karma that is intended action is the physical category. So when we look at what created all of the realms and all of the universes, we would say that it would be karma that is intention, and karma that is intended action is the creator of these things.
Jiden kan hasubat Ramana Mamadena, Ishubatina Gadu Zuber, Gadu Zuberes, Masu Namba Jena, Leli Chever, Leli Zuberes, Leli Cheveres, Roa, Leli Cheveres, Seribazu Karatus, Genders woman.
Kashi.
Yeah.
Kashi. So here we find some differences, because in the Christian tradition, if we were to ask, how were these things created? The assertion would be that God created these things. And we say that as Buddhists, that it's karma that creates all of these things. And Rinpoche said, what is it that science says now? I know there's an idea of an explosion. So he's referring to the Big Bang. So he just put a question out there. So all these varieties of countries and air places, if you will, were created by karma. So here it says the Vabhashikas divide physical and verbal karma into two types, the perceptible and imperceptible, and hold that both types always have form. So this view that these karmas are form is also held by the middle way consequence school. So this is the Great Exposition School holds this view, and when we look at in terms of tenet systems, there are 4 tenet systems: the Great Exposition School, which is called the Vabhashika, the Sutra School called the Sautrantika School, the Mind-Only School called Chittamantran, and the Middle Way School, Madhyamaka. So it is the, and there are divisions within those different tenets also. So the highest view is held by the Middle Way Consequence School, which is Madhyamaka Prasangika. So they hold the exact same view that these karmas, perceptible and imperceptible, are form, as the Vabhashikas, the Great Exposition School view holders. The other schools, the Sautrantika, the Chittamantran, and the actual Middle Way Autonomy School, which is the lower of the two Madhyamaka schools, hold that these are actually mental factors, that they aren't forms. They fall categorically under mental factors. So it's only the highest and the lower school that holds the view that they are form. The others believe mental factors. Diksa Rinpoche.
다 류나글레라 리제타 리제마이 베니수시네 조진 코나 시람하와 르루스르와
라서
류나글레라 리제타 류나글레 리제스나 당가서 롱라서나 도마부차로 도마부차버들라테네 안 콜롱라버데 리그 나버리제스 소팅스마바 당가서 슐루그 나줄라테네 안 콜롱라서 어떻게 내가 처바지 뭐 시대야 줘 말이야. 리제스 소팅사래. 근데 리제 마음이 소스가 다들 그런 것도 맞다. 그쪽도 맞다. 그냥 도 맞다. 인사 말이야.
So here, this is the statement that's being made about perceptible and imperceptible physical and verbal karmas being form is a view that's held by the Great Exposition School as well as the Middle Way Consequence School. So perceptible action, physical or verbal karma, rather. Karma just means action, though. It's a Sanskrit word. Perceptible would be, for instance, when one gets angry, and then the very apparent red color comes out in his or her face. That is a perceptible karma that's taking place. That anger is manifesting in an actual perceptible color of red. And then An example of imperceptible karma that is a form would be the vows, for instance, the individual liberation vow of the householder's vows, or the novice vows, or the fully ordained vows. These are examples of imperceptible karma or action that is form. Dixon.
Well, Lunga Lela Regime, my minister, Conan Shira Mayan Dobala, the Lumi any Kaganus, Lumi any Sazan Parwa, Luduba Sazamba, Rajuba Snotake, what the Lunga later Sambilame Chosagora, Lumi any Jakane, Lunga Regime, Tanya Tunjubi, Samba Lajebe, Leniga Samba Jedos, Luigi Letan. Age Lenica, Sambal Jaures, do the Bosupon Samba de Zoimbare, do the Ba, Sanzamba, Mora Juba Sunte, Sambal do Serta.
So here it says Vasubandhu refutes this. So this idea that it's form is what Vasubandhu is going to refute. It says asserting that physical and verbal karma are intentions that work along with perceptible physical and verbal behavior. Thus, both forms of karma, intention and intended, are actually intentions. So this is a view that is held by the Sautrantika school, the mind-only school, which is the Chittamantran school, and the middle way autonomy school, the Madhyamika, the Yogacara, I'm sorry, I've forgotten, but the lower of the Madhyamaka schools.
Tashi Shilela Gimaguluma Tensun Yujan, the Dombini source, that late and the Gile, the Magile, the two shagre, Luma ten Shigmaris, Dombini source. Tomini source. Tagawa to what the Lund gate any Lund Tembakashi, and then I made the one reasonable Gawak. Gawala DJ to Guna in a J. Don't I be Gawa, Muni Gawa, Kunu Gawa, Sunday Gawa. What is Jagadua? Tabatam Bikazawa. Tadatan the Sunday Shalas Kunu, Shalas Kunu, what doing with it. Gawala in a J or as Tentabi Gawa, Moni Gawa, Kungo, Sunday Gawa. Tentabi Gawa, Tabaris Taba, Tabatambis, Tabat Tentabi Gawares, Tabat Tentabi Gawa, Tabat the Gawas, Migitaba Mazu, Tabat the Gongone Mares, Tabat Tabaris, Gawa in the Mataba Igures. Then the moon is go out Tagaza on the Imbare. And then the Sha maybe Gaza, Shedan maybe Gaza, Tuma maybe Gazazont, Yusun, Tosun, Gazazons, Gazazon, Solution, Yadiake, Yusun, Tosun, Gazazon, the Sha maybe Gaza, Shedan maybe Gaza, Tuma maybe Gazazon, but the moon is Gavares, Marba. Moon is Gawai, which is a Kunu Druid on the Gavare. Kunu Tugumare, Tondele Tugumares, Kunu Druz on the Gawari Duezan, Moni Gavares. What that Tonde Gavata, Tonde the Carso, whatever Tonde Gavas, that Kundunga Chetan Gawaka Marwa. Kundunga the gates hand on somebody in the do, and then Tonde Gawa. Kundunga the Magis hand on somebody in the do, Magi Tonde Magos, Marba. What is that?
Then go along the Gyapa.
Kulun Gawa with the Kulun Gawa.
Lesser.
Kulun Takalun Gayukin and how the shots of Alasuba. What the Kulun Gawa at the Marba?
Okay. So then it reads, in general, karma is of three types, virtuous, non-virtuous, and ethically neutral, but here we are concerned only with the first two. Only with the first two. Virtuous karma is of two types, contaminated and uncontaminated. I will only discuss contaminated virtuous karma. I think Rinpoche didn't read that far. So when we look at the breakdown, there's virtuous karma, non-virtuous, and that which has not been presented in Scripture. It's called ethically neutral here, but literally it's not been presented in Scripture as virtue or non-virtue. So the definition of virtue, which we went over before, is that it's been revealed in Scripture and abides in the type or is of the kind of continuum of which produces happiness. It is a continuum of something that will produce happiness. Its continuum will produce happiness. So that's the definition of virtue. That's been presented in Scripture, and it abides in the type which produces happiness. When we divide virtue up, we can divide it into 4 different categories. Here we have 2 in the Lamrim Chenmo, but we can divide it in other ways and divide it into 4. First is ultimate virtue. Second is inherent existence or natural virtue. Third is association virtue, or virtue by association. And then, fourth category is virtue of motivation. So we begin with ultimate virtue. Ultimate virtue, we're referring to liberation. This isn't actually virtue. It's nominally designated as virtue, but it's permanent. It's a permanent phenomena. So it isn't technically virtue. Therefore, it isn't technically virtue. Liberation is ultimate virtue. Natural virtue, or you can also, it's almost inherent virtue, would refer to the omnipresent mental factors that are accompanying a virtuous mind or a virtuous consciousness. These let me just go, hold on here 1 second. I'm sorry, I mixed 2 up. Let me go back. The natural virtue or inherent virtue is referring to the opposite of the 3 poisons. Sorry about that. So the opposite of the 3 poisons. When we see in the 7-point thought transformation, it says the 3 objects, the 3 root virtues, the 3 poisons. So the 3 poisons are attachment, hatred or anger, and ignorance. So the 3 root virtues are the actual the absence of the virtue, which is the absence of attachment, the virtue which is the absence of anger, virtue which is the absence of ignorance. So this is what the 3 root virtues are referring to, and that's this natural virtue. Association, virtue by association, is referring to those mental factors that accompany the consciousness that are virtuous at the time that the actual virtue is taking place, is being done by the mind or by the body or speech. So those mental factors that are present, that are accompanying it, the action. And then motivation is the last, and that's referring to, for instance, if one is paying homage, one's motivation is virtue. It's a virtuous motivation that's taking place there. So one is motivated to revere, or motivated to, I don't want to say bow down, but to pay homage, to prostrate. That's what motivation is referring to. So we'll take a short break. And we'll be right back. If somebody wants to hand out some cookies or nuts or...
Da gi le la sa ji sa me ni she do de da de nge wu do da gi le la sa ji sa me ni le de sa ji da te yang pa bi ju le yo sa ji de su su ju ju le yo sa ji ni le de she ma wu su su ju ju le yo sa ji she ge des o ya da de ne wa de 다 사제의 사면 어디 사제스가 산지 당군도와 kuyu-saba, nyomu-bi-saba, tobi-saba, shidi-saba, ane kare. Nyomu-bi-saji, shidi-saji, kuyu-saji, ane?
Tobi-saji.
Tobi-saji, wad-teje-tere. Teje-jibitela-saji-la-saji.
Lessa.
Nyomu-bi-saji imi-chab. Shidi-ina shidi-saji imi-chab. Tuba-ina tubi-saji imi-chab. Kuwa-ina kuwa-saji imi-chab. Saji-su-jil-ma-ta-san-ta-am-do.
Lessa.
Te-ma-imi-chue-de-sa-me. Te-jibu-kan-ru-imi-chue-de-saji.
So here it says virtuous karma is of two types, contaminated and uncontaminated. So what does this mean? If we were to divide contaminated into categories, we would divide it into four categories. Contaminated cyclic existence, contaminated conceptuality, contaminated afflictions, contaminated obstructions to omniscience. If it is any among those four, it is necessarily contaminated. If it is something other than any among those four, then it's necessarily not contaminated. This is the qualification for something to be contaminated. It is within these four: cyclic existence, afflictions, obstructions to omniscience, conceptuality. So we find in the Prajnaparamita teachings this presented.
Döchati yidungwa den döchachi gumarba yidungwa ita meba yidungwa tene döchati ajingwa jimano mebi gun saba jesurungwa
Okay.
Ta chonde gun saba jesurungwa chonde chedan choa dushi semanga de ane nyomu kai marwa ku nyomu do chumba den de saji chonde saji res chonde saji gi sendo soba den de Tonden gawa, magi santo somba den tonden magawa isare. Tonden gon saba jesurungas.
Mene the mipa, the long garment, the abhidharma.
Abhidharma ko yango ko deliyore. Saji kanshi teda la sana ko dijeba jurus. Saji segen garja asna. San meba da sonde kono ko saba jesurunga de saji ki tores.
Yes,
Te mayin bi chu ngalo na sameis. Samel tan ne nakatan gobanis. Demain chez nous on de nakatan gobanis. Nakat taba yin logre. An susu tangu to tami jin goba. What the son de demain chez samel logre.
Okay, so it states in the Abhidharma teachings that it is contaminated if it is among these among these four types that were presented before. So it's contaminated if it's among these four types. It isn't if it is something outside of them, if it's something which is not presented as them. So we see, for instance, when there's an object of observation that's attractive, then this creates this attachment that takes place, or if there's something unattractive or that someone finds is repulsed by, then it causes an arisal of anger to take place. So the object of observation is associated with a contaminated mind, or a contaminated mind that's perceiving it, therefore that object itself is also contaminated. So the objects and the actual apprehenders of the objects are contaminated if those four things are present. And if those four things are present for the apprehender, then that which is apprehended is contaminated. It's also like the when we look at the that word association, it's contaminated mental factors. For instance, if the mind itself is contaminated because it's accompanying it, so it is necessarily also contaminated. So the feeling, discrimination, intention, contact, and mental engagement, which are mental factors, are by default contaminated because the apprehending consciousness itself is contaminated. So those are 2 points that were made. I think that's it. Khensur Rinpoche.
Tā dūjī la sācī sāmē nīg nā, tā sāmē te kāsū kura, tā tēne tēyā tā ōngā tēngā tā parā sāngā tā mītē sōs, tōnglāng gōnglāng mūlū lāng, tūni mōsū tūpi tōnglāng gōnglāng mūlū lāng, wā tū sū sāmē yī sā sāmē. Sōngjī kī yuñ tēng kā sāmē yī mī chāng rī tā.
Sanjay Yunten. Okay. So when we look at actual compounded or products themselves, it's translated as a lot of things. Caused phenomena, it's also translated as, or product. There are contaminated products, and then there are non-contaminated products. If, for instance, it's an excellent quality of the Buddha, any excellent quality of the Buddha is necessarily not contaminated. So this is an example of something which is not contaminated. The Sanjay Yunten Yena, the Same Yinbi Chap. Then the Gari Sumpre.
Oh, that didn't what
Ni Sampa Kanga Lapsa.
Tā lēlā yāng sōnā kī lē tā, sōnā māyī bī lē tā, mā yū lē sōng jā kā tuwa. Lēlā yī na sōnā jī lē, sōnā māyī bī lē, mā yū lē sōng jā kā tuwa. Tā lā kī lēlā sōnā tu sōnā māyī bī lē yī lā, sōnā jī lē nē, dō khāng jī kī yū lē sō, sōnā kī lē tē, dō khāng jī kī lē, tēne wā tē, sōnā māyī bī lē tā, sōnā kī lē nī rā wā, sōnā kī lē tā, sōnā māyī bī lē nī jē, ānā ngā sō dawā yō mā rā bā, sīndī yī dawā, sīshimī dawā, sīndī yī dawā kī chē tu sā shā bī lē kī ngā lō, sōnā māyī bī lē yī sā rā. Tsinti yi dwa ki che tu saa shaba le ka nga lo suna ma yi bi le. Tsishimi dwa ki che tu saa shaba ki le ka nga lo suna ji le. Suna ji le. Ta tene me yu le, ta tene kaan koma zu zu me ji ya ka le tu me yu le lo da marba.
So virtuous karma is of two types, contaminated and uncontaminated. I will only discuss contaminated virtuous karma, of which there are two types, that present in a noble being's mind and that present in an ordinary person's mind. Only the latter need concern us here. Non-virtuous karma is karma that is non-meritorious. Meritorious karma is virtuous karma in the minds of beings of the desire realm. Invariable karma is contaminated virtuous karma in the minds of beings in the of the form or formless realms. And then similarly, the treasury of knowledge says. So then we get a quote from the Abhidharma teaching. So we divide karmas. We can divide them into three categories: meritorious karma, non-meritorious karma, and invariable karma, or immutable karma, it's translated as a lot. So these are the three categories. And say di.
Talela sono mai bileta sono cileta mayu le son jagdwa. Ena niro son ro. Ta mayu le do te zuzume ji se dubi gwa sabata jibile to mayu le res. Zuzume se dubi kaza mayu le so sa zuzume ji le to mayu le imare. Kon karasan zu le sonon de kan gele me koma lejebe chez son bicheros waterendo.
So we have these three types of karma: invariable karma, meritorious karma, and non-meritorious karma. So again, where do we find these points that are being made? It's in the Treasury of Knowledge in Abhidharma text. It says merit is the virtuous karma of the desire realm, and variable karma produces the higher deities realms. So here, this is saying that meritorious karma is a karma of this realm, whereas something which is called an invariable karma is specific to the higher deities realms, the form and formless realms is what it's speaking of here. Khensur Rinpoche.
Tawada kan kuma jige le de mayu le sloro mayu le mi jusen kares chi shir mayu le jashenas kan kuma jige le zuzu men jige le tula ne mayu le karjine mayu le sonvares jabares na shena chetar dobi kana lai ten la meju le gaji mata tonu ta eda jiten la me pa ne debu yo yinba tejin do kan koma sa jin do meju le na sa tele jin do meme be na meyo wa shi sha de sa kan shi san de da do le na me shi meyu shir shi son bi shiro sa meyu le mi ju sen de se de marba ji je meyu le ja shi na je tan debi kan la lai ten la meju debi kan la de la ji je le joro wa de la jije ki le de ke chang sang wa de me ten la me ngres mal je ya da me de la phang su ba ya de me ro chang sang tun ru de la me ngres da nga su ka zo pi ko ja de ma pi ko zo je ba je ra ro wa zo je bu to de la phen ji le de ke zo je ju she ba la de ne an pi ko ze zo je ba la so ba wo tun ru de la me to zo me ro teji tene ta yeda jiden la meba ne yeda jiden la meba ne wote imbarata te yeda al ten ne bache mo do wata ane yeda zuchujen yeda mambo ane pazen kasugure ba yeda mambo to so wote ko nebache yo ba de gawag je go gawag zuje shene o de era ten mi go bare o te ji lo shan mare
ne de yeda gar je yin ten long
yeda ka sa yeda te so ro nga su ten bana o man ju go de le jimbi le bote ne dendu ten me ba yo are ngadu ten me ba yo are jimbi le bote dendu ten me ba chutin la rale gres chutin so mala ten jimbi le bote ne me ten mata dendu ten me ngres chutin de ab ma so ba ina ne jima ta ja ben de bote ne yeda tan lo tu se ten me ngres lo ta yeda zuchu chen to su ten me ngres lo tu su jera reserva lo
so it says non-virtuous karma is karma that is non-meritorious. Meritorious karma is virtuous karma that in the minds of beings of the desire realm invariable karma is contaminated virtuous karma in the realms of beings of the form or formless realms. And then it says, similarly, the treasury of knowledge says, merit is the virtuous karma of the desire realm. Invariable karma produces the higher deities realms. And then why is it called invariable karma? In the desire realm, karma that should bear fruit while you are a deity may instead bear fruit while you are a human or an animal and a hungry ghost or a hungry ghost. Thus its effect is variable. In the higher deities realms, karma that should bear fruit at a certain level does not mature at levels other than that. Thus it is invariable. Thus the treasury of knowledge says. Why? Because the fruition of karma on these levels is not variable. So here, this is stating that there's, even if one is a deity or a god and creates a karma, if he or she is creating for instance, a meritorious karma, a virtuous karma in the desire realm, if that is the case, then it can actually come to fruition anywhere within cyclic existence. There isn't a specific place or time, etc., where it can actually arise in the form of an experience. So here it says, if you created something as a deity, while you were a deity, for instance, in the future you might have some sort of manifestation of that action occur in the lower realms of cyclic existence, as a hungry ghost, for instance, or in other realms where there are varying varieties of experience that you can have. So it says here, you should karma that should bear fruit while you are a deity may instead bear fruit while you are a human, an animal, or a hungry ghost. Thus its effect is variable. So this is what it's meaning. There's a variety of results that can be created by it. If there is something in the form or formless realm that's created, which is an invariable karma or immutable karma, then that can only specifically come to fruition in that form or formless realm place. It never changes or comes to fruition in a lower realm, meaning in this case the desire realm. Which would be, looking at the 6 realms in that one category called desire realm. So that's the point that's made here. Khensur Rinpoche.
This one. Oh, that me let the what in David the Kankoman to Mares, me leg and David the Kankoman of Madu, Jusan Carasana, me let Sabitzer, and then double joint tower, Ponja Towers, double. Nemo Tsutunga la Suba, double joint and Ponjata, Kankoma de Nemeva Tsurinwa, what the Tojatane, Dingas of Gomba is what they later David, double Megamare, Kankoma Megamares. You think that is?
So this invariable means that there are not these varieties of experience that can be created by a being who's in these higher realms, meaning the higher deity realms, meaning the form or formless realm. There are not these varieties of results that can happen from the accumulation of karma in those beings' positions. There are only specific results that can happen that are specific to that realm that they're abiding in, where it was accumulated. So this is the reasoning and the reason for it to be called this invariable or immutable karma. And it's because there aren't these varieties of experience that take place, only specifically experiences of those realms.
Was in the sun that the conscious that Lena Mish, she son what taros, that never less will be true, Niba less will be true. 레수 비추드 말베 레수 비추드라 어떤 자지 사제 제대로 제
J.
레수 비추드라 자지 사제 제대네 담부되네 레수 비추네 시바바나라 길레 제진 수바유라 메기 레자 주주당 시모기 수바유장 난도다 된주 코아 팬비 레네 파비 수바메시테 오마자와레 쿠자와 뉴제데 대지케난도 메지 대시메게 시베인 케베데니 통시로 시송바당 회변인이 제장 덴바 통라 팬바벤 시송베 시르스 워드바 담부드레 다 코아 팬지게 레수 제 레수바데 안에 파바술로 레수바요 알아서 말베 시파발라 레제진 수바요라 메기 레장 주주의 성우 수바요 알아서 주주 성우 시모 다통바 어때 주주의 성우니 네트리 쇼아가 주주 성우 시모 다통바스 어때 자요로 슈네
Shavaka. Okay.
쇼아가 어때 성우의 시모 쇼아가 파바를 파바
So the J. Rinpoche.
쇼바제다 제네 데블 네버제 제로세 쇼네 제스그레
Okay.
시몬 쇼바단 제네 시몬 쇼바단 제네 시몬 쇼바단 제네 다중 쇼바단 다중 제네 제
Lesser. And then the Jayan Sheva, the Sache, the Tambo, the Lodru.
레수 비추들라와 자지 사지 지디네 담부듯이
Sawashera.
소아시로 롱어드라 소아시로 롱던 저그 롱어 투수바들로 담부들에
Okay, so now let me just read the rest of this out. I think I read everything. Why? Because the fruition of karma on these levels is not variable. So now we move on to number 2, how you accumulate karma. It says, in general, beings create and accumulate only virtuous karma, yet stream enterers and once returners, noble beings on lower levels may accumulate non-virtuous karma. However, such noble beings do not accumulate karma that it would impel them into a cyclic existence of either happy or miserable realms. For as Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise on the middle way says, as the root of cyclic existence is compositional activity, the wise do not create activity that impels rebirth. Unwise are those who do. The wise do not because they see reality. And then we have a quote from Vasubandhu, when you have seen the truth, you are not impelled to rebirth. Going back to the top here, Jayan Sheba says that we can divide this section, how you accumulate karma, into 8 different categories. Those 8 categories begin with category number 1, which is the Nagarjuna's presentation according to the fundamental treatise on the middle way. So that'll be the first category, and that also has within it Vasubandhu's quote. So we have those 2 points that are made within it. That's the, according to, like I said, Jayan Sheba, the first category in there. So then we have these different levels of beings who are on the, for instance, the hearer's path. And it says here in the text, make however no let me just find it here, yet stream enterers and once returners. There are 8 levels that are approaching and abiding according to the lesser vehicle system. So you have the approacher to the fruit of a stream enterer, abider in the fruit of a stream enterer, approacher to the fruit of a once returner, abider in the fruit of a once returner, approacher in the fruit of a never returner, and abider in the fruit of never returner, approacher in the fruit of the foe destroyer, and then abider in the fruit of the foe destroyer. So these are the 8 levels that you'll find in the Shravaka system and the hearer's system, and this is what some of these are referring to. Decent room change.
What that juju the shungu magi lesa ba yorete tenu phenji le dangan phenji lesa ba yomares maybe jusen karesana uma tawa shero naga jona marba uma tawa le ku tawan duje te tejir kenan do mejes ku tawan duje ko phenji le te ne ko phenji duje le te ne tejir kenan do mejes toni 가서 돈이 무슨 두비 개발나라 개발 쪽에 내 코아벤이 렌도 시가 말이스 대신 키는 도매지 디셔를 돈이 무슨 두비 개발나지 내 코아벤이 렌도 시가 말이스 대신 키는 도매지 디셔 마키시비스 내 가서 그래 다 돈이 무슨 도마도 단지 좋아도 주비 Makeba to go at the cooperative sagres.
Lessa.
Tishimaki Shabins, Kebit the new Toncheros,
Lessa.
Keba the Getoni Monsum Tomba Yenzota, Papa to Tony Monsum Tomba Yenzota, and the cooperative sagmares.
Lessa.
Papa Maima sagres.
Lessa.
Water and war.
Lessa.
Sheson Batanza. That have any Demba Tona Pemba mess. Demba Gonzum Tonsagan the cooperative lesa by Maris. Demba Tona Pemba man. See the Andrele and Siemens. What did you do? She's on the Tambo, what about the
Lessa. So here it says noble beings on lower levels, so that's referring to the stream enterers and once returners, as we just talked about, the Shravaka system, may accumulate non-virtuous karma. However, such noble beings do not accumulate karma that would impel them into a cyclic existence of either happy or miserable realms. So then it says, for Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise on the middle way, the Mulyamanimika Karika says, as the root of cyclic existence is compositional activity, the wise do not create activity that impels rebirth. Unwise are those who do. The wise do not because they see reality. So here, wise, here we're referring to those superior beings, those Arya beings. Those Arya beings who've had a direct, valid cognition of emptiness at the path of seeing, the path of meditation, or the path of no more learning. So for those beings, they no longer accumulate the karma that would be throwing karma into another rebirth, into cyclic existence. They do not create those any longer because the coarse afflictions have been abandoned at that level for the superior, for the Arya who has seen emptiness. Even though they have karma still present, they don't accumulate new karma that would actually create this rebirth in the circle of cyclic existence. So it says the wise do not create activity that impels rebirth. So those superior beings, after they've seen emptiness, no longer create activity or engage in action that would cause another rebirth. So that's the reason why these beings are no longer reborn or have to be reborn or are forced into rebirth because they no longer have the potential for that because they don't accumulate the causes for the experience. And then Vasubandhu says, when you have seen the truth, you are not impelled to rebirth. So here Vasubandhu's talking about seeing emptiness directly. When you've seen emptiness directly, then you no longer are thrown into or impelled to rebirth. Meaning you don't create this karma for more rebirth. The Ton Lampa, the Korwa Yanjer Jegudu. Jayur. Then Lessa.
Saji Mobu, Tobo Yure.
So even I was asking Rinpoche about the being on the path of seeing. It's only that being's direct valid cognition of emptiness that's actually not contaminated, that would fall categorically under uncontaminated. That being still is contaminated. That being still has conceptuality, still has various negativities, but the coarse things are gone, and they no longer, as a result of seeing reality, create more circumstances for suffering within it.
다 레수비 수들라 사지 지디네 사지 담부들레 네 파바족이 코아페이 레사고 말레스 된다도 연구도와 코아페이 레사고 말레스 다 사지 니바들레 너 코아페이 레사고 간데 주어레스 뭐드니 발테도와 코아페이 레사고 너 간데 고그레스 데나스 제시도 라니 가자게 다든진비 온도 로아데시도 펜지지 레술라스 가자 나지기 제와도 주되게 너 가자 속에 코아펜지게 레술그레스 다음에 비토코나니 monsun도 또네네 파바로 파바 다음에 비토코나니 monsun 또네네 레뉴지 원기 코아지와 요장스 펜지지 레사도 사고요 말레스 레뉴종 코아지바도 요아레 주주도 요로 주주 세바 랜tun바와 너 코알 지와 랜tun로서 모빌레 요로 네 코알 레뉴종 코알 지와 랜바 요나야 코아 펜지게 레사도 바요 마레스 마수테 마토데 제토ቹ 투chung 동아타레 example 주주다 숑게 단지 단도멜레 주주도 숑게 단지 단도 랑마레 단지게 지와도 로마레스 안에 만두 주생 가르스나 돈이 무슨 또 베셔 워들라도 마르베 단지 단도 mel레지 뭐 안내주 단지 단도 mel레와 뇽보와 내주셔비 살송베 상가게 내주셔비 살송도 사 what the susun dusna nejushebe salusun dus nejushebe salusun so yeah.
Consequently, as long as you operate under the influence of the conception of a self, you will accumulate karma that will impel you into cyclic rebirth. Once you have perceived reality, that is selflessness, you may still be reborn in cyclic existence by the power of forma karma and afflictions, but you will not accumulate any new karma that can impel such rebirth, as the Sangha's level of yogic deed states, and then it'll go on to validate what's been presented by Lama Tsongkhapa already above that. So here it's saying that once you have perceived reality, so once, what does that mean? That means once you've had a direct valid cognition of emptiness, once you become a superior being, become an Arya being, and here it's qualified, it says, once you have perceived reality, that is selflessness. So once you have had this direct valid cognition of the no self, of the lack of self that you have, then even though you can be born in cyclic existence still by your karma and your afflictions, you don't create anything new. You don't create any new opportunities for the experience of being thrust or thrown into other realms of cyclic existence. So here. I'm sorry, you don't accumulate karma that will create new experiences within cyclic existence as a superior being. So once you've seen emptiness directly. So the Papa Tome, the Chenrezig Losung,
Papa Tome je bon nenju shebi sale son biros nenju shebi sa nenju shebi sa was sadenga no nenju shebi sa se marbe what le sanga son do so konde Papa Tome jagudo.
That's it. So a Sangha's levels of yogic deeds is where we find this information about this information just presented here, that this grasping at this true self, when that's present, and when you're under the influence of that grasping at the self as being truly established, then you will definitely have rebirth again. And once you've perceived the lack of self that you were grasping at, then you don't have any reason to accumulate new karma to throw you into another negative circumstance. It says, as the Sangha's level of yogic deeds says, stream enterers and once returners do not ascend to do not ascend to the conception of a self, but rather reject it. In the same way, the strong overpower the weak. Okay. So where so there are 5 different pathways, Mahayana pathways. The first is the path of accumulation. The second is the path of preparation. The third is the path of seeing. The fourth is the path of meditation. And the fourth is the path of no more learning. On those different pathways, there are various levels. So when we look at the path of preparation is the where one starts to get rid of that conception of self, and then inferentially understands it in a complete way just before there is a direct valid cognition of it. And that direct valid cognition is the actual path of seeing. Once that takes place, once there is an actual seeing of emptiness, then that being is a superior being at that point in time. So the path of preparation has 4 categories. So it's heat, the peak patience, and the last mundane place of cyclic existence. So these are the 4 categories of that are in the path of preparation, or the 4 stages of the path of preparation. So once one crosses over from preparation to seeing, at that point one is a superior and is now operating under this understanding, under this wisdom that understands the nature of reality and has, because of the direct perception of it, and therefore reacts differently to to reality. Heat, peak, patience, last mundane state. So looking at the categories of the pathways, the path of accumulation has 3 categories: small, medium, and great. The path of preparation has 4 categories: the heat, peak, patience, and last mundane state. And then it's at that last mundane state where the person is just about to see emptiness directly. So that's the last time that he or she will be an ordinary person. That's the last period while they're on that last mundane state level of the path of preparation. That's the last time that being will be an ordinary being. He or she will then transform into or become, however one wants to say it, a superior. After that, that's the next step from there, the next stage from there. Dixon.
So if we look
at the mantra in the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, Teata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasangati Bodhisoha, the first two gates, Teata Om Gate Gate, are referring to the path of accumulation and the path of preparation. So at those two levels, you still have the ability to accumulate the propelling karma that would cause cyclic existence. But when we get to Paragate, Parasangati, Bodhisoha, at that point one has transcended from the path of seeing to the path of meditation to the path of no more learning, the ordinary being state, and transcended then the accumulation of causes for cyclic existence. Dixon.
What that Saji, what is about Saji Nibati? Saji Dombu Papa Ko, Pegi Lesa Maris. Niba de Ko Pegi Lesa and Usana, you know, Chuchu Mechi, the Ko Pegi Lesa Gres, Niba de Dua.
Okay, Tambo, that's our ship. Nipa, Yanjasuna?
Dombu to Papa to Ko Pegi Lesa Maris, Sawashi Lon, Sawashi do Mondamadua. That Niba to no Ko Pegi Lesa and Usana. Oh,
okay, Jula. Okay, so the first category. So when we look at Jayan Sheba's outline of the 8 categories within this, how you accumulate karma, the first category shows how the superior beings no longer accumulate the karma that creates cyclic existence, and that is then supported by the fundamental treatise on the middle way, which is the root wisdom text by Nagarjuna, and then also supported here by Basu Bandhu, where a same point is made about the superior beings not having to create the karma for another rebirth. So this is the first category, in cyclic existence, another rebirth in cyclic existence. This is the first category. The second category then deals with where is the last place, or the last where is the final point for someone who is still an ordinary being, and that then is answered by at the path of preparation. That last mundane state is where we find the ordinary being's last kind of time as an ordinary being.
That's Haji Sumbatin the second day that Numuja Maribatan, GD Jawan, Numuja Maribatan, GD Jawan Jobates, Numuja Maribi Jawan Jobatan, GD Jawan Joba, Numuja Mariba, Numuja Mariba, GD Jawan Jobas, that Numuja Maribatan. Mariba the Konanila Maribata, Lendela Maribata Mariba, Yamuja Mariba Sana, what they the Konanila Maribata, what to injure GT Gita Sana, Raju Jingala made not Ramon Rubazi, Sharon Yamuja Gita Mariba Gita Yamuja Maribata, GT Jawan to Jubata. Maribatan, Jiti Jawan to Jubate, Le Tanga, Eson Tege, Sujela Sube, Megi Sagaresa, Megi Sujeso, Mago, Ngobaran de Shenas, Sona Maimbi, Lesulasa, Sona Mai Lesugreseta, De Hanjikawa, Jimbaton, De Hanjikawa Jimbatan, Sutin son Sun de Shenane. Sonage les agresses, centaines de zoom et du Chenrezig ou Gonane, mais les sobayinos, Saji Somba de Terendua.
Suma Mingai.
Did Sumba mean today. The other Yamuji Maribata and GD you want to Juba. The GD you want to Juba to get and go suju. Then go some base, Lu Nai Somarba. Suju Magi Le Sagres, Doshina. Sona Maibi Lesula Sa. Sona Mai Lesugan to what the Nisugres. The country was Jimbaton, Sutin on la Suban Dushinane, Sona Gile Sagres, Sona de Conquille.
That's it.
Mayuko Malaysia, Santé dans Zoom, c'est du B, when a son and me les Ubayinos, Sumba to water.
So,
Sombatal, Sona Maibletan, Sona Gileta, me les Agent College or Sana, what the Shimundu, Sombanolo.
so now we get into category number 3, and it deals with how these various karmas, meritorious, non-meritorious, and immutable or invariable karmas are created. So how are they? So it says, in the same way the strong overpower the weak. Hence, every ordinary person, from the highest level of the supreme stage of the Mahayana path of preparation on down, accumulates karma that impels rebirth in cyclic existence. Accordingly, when those who are under the influence of afflicted ignorance and the view of the perishing aggregates become physically, verbally, or mentally involved in non-virtue, killing, for example, they accumulate non-meritorious karma. Those who perform virtuous acts within the desire realm, such as practicing generosity or maintaining ethical discipline, accumulate meritorious karma. So I think I'm reading forward. I'm just going to finish this. Those who cultivate the meditative states, such as meditative serenity, at the level of meditative stabilizations of the form realm, or the formless absorptions, accumulate invariable karma. Here, there's an this is number 3. I guess Khandre. Who? The Khandre. The Sona Mayimile Sonanjile Dan Muile Khandre Su.
Yamuji Maribata, GD you want to Jubi, and the Kanza to the Sona Maibile Sagres.
Lasso.
GD you want to get Jula Machilma to your Marwa.
Lasso.
Jula Machilma to your Marwa.
Lasso.
The Sagres, Tan Debi Kanjin, Goal Jimbatan, the Sutin Sumalasoba, what to Sona Gileres. Tan Dobal Juntan Nemo was Syrian. At the Jun to Ta, Monjata, Kankumal Syrian, Nemabal Tojatane, Sanden Guna, and the Mu les Anagres, Sedube, Gune Mu les Ubayinos. What the Somba de Lovat the Sonagiletan, Sona Maibile, the Mu Subsuite, Somba Ledo.
Okay,
yeah.
So number 3 is who accumulates meritorious, non-meritorious, and invariable karma. So that's what number 3 is in Jayan Sheva's outline. So I'll just read it again because now it makes more sense. Accordingly, when those who are under the influence of afflicted ignorance and the view of the perishing aggregates become physically, verbally, or mentally involved in non-virtue, killing, for example, they accumulate non-meritorious karma. Those who perform virtuous acts within the desire realm, such as practicing generosity or maintaining ethical discipline, accumulate meritorious karma. Those who accumulate meditative states, such as meditative serenity, at the level of meditative stabilizations of the form realm, or the formless absorptions, accumulate invariable karma. So this is who accumulates these types of karma, number 3. So we're out of time, and thank you very much, and we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. So in the future, we'll go over this again. So we'll do it.
Yeah.
The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Lama to shine forever. I send forth this jewel mandala to you, precious Guru.
I dedicate
All this version is
to emulate the knowledge of the pure way tree, likewise the
Abbot as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds in that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains. You're the source of all happiness. All-powerful Abbot Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Rinpoche, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, the spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Geshe Rinpoche, Lamrim, Chenmo,